Friends, hello, I hope you're well. Welcome to day 11. And today we see some pretty inspiring people and we read some incredible stories of faith. So let's go first to Genesis, and if we skip straight down to chapter 22, we come across Abraham and Isaac, and God gives Abraham a seriously hard test of his faith. Anyone watching this who is a parent will completely understand quite how hard it must have been for Abraham. Look at verse 2, where God said to Abraham, "Take your son, your only son, who you love, and sacrifice him." Picture that, this only son, Isaac, where Abraham and Sarah had waited and had worried for years and years and years, wondering, are we never going to have children? And then God promises them, yes, you will have a son. And then they finally have a child. It's the most amazing thing. And then God turns around a little while later and says, okay, now I want you to take him and sacrifice him, to kill him. And that word, sacrifice, Abraham would have known exactly what was meant, and it would have rattled when God said it. Because God didn't just want Abraham to quickly do away with Isaac. He wanted him to sacrifice, to do it with all the pomp and the ceremony and the worship, if you like, that Abraham would have done any other sacrifice with. And so imagine Abraham's pain when he's cutting up the wood we see in the passage to be used for the fire to burn Isaac. And then to get to the place where God had told them to go for the sacrifice, it was a 3-day walk. And so that's a long time to be walking, knowing what's coming. And then Isaac turns around and he says, okay, Dad, I know we're going to do a sacrifice. We've got the fire, we've got the wood, that's great. But what about the lamb? That's quite an important bit of the sacrifice. I don't know how you would have answered that question if it was you. But Abraham, when he answers, he says that, don't worry, son, God will provide the sacrificial lamb. Abraham perhaps was thinking Isaac as that lamb, but he just didn't want to say to him, well, actually, son, it's going to be you. But actually, when Abraham said that, he spoke incredibly prophetically. And God kind of met that in two different ways. First of all, we see in the story that just as Abraham had Isaac ready and he lifted up the knife to slay his son, God said, stop, I don't want you to go ahead. I've seen your faith. I don't want you to kill your son. And at that moment, we see Abraham looks, and in the hedge is a lamb or a ram that God had provided for the sacrifice then. But also, this story links so obviously to the story of Jesus. And God providing Jesus as a lamb, as a sacrifice to take our place. And then into chapter 13, Sarah, Abraham's wife, dies. And so Abraham wants to buy some land so that he can bury her. And then we meet Ephron, who is a Hittite. And Ephron offers Abraham this land for free. He says it will cost, it's worth 400 shekels of silver, which is a lot of money. But then he says, but between me and you, what's that? Let's just bury her. Don't worry about the money. Now, that's an interesting story. Ephron, the Hittite, in this story models, if you like, better behaviour than many of the Israelites, or if you like, many of God's chosen people that we've seen recently. I think of Abraham, who so much recently has been messing people about. And yet, as Christians, we are called to be an example to other people. Let's not allow ourselves to be shown up by non-Christians who, if you like, act and live better than us. Let's lead the way. Let's be examples as we're out and about. On into Matthew, following on that idea, we meet this centurion who's a Roman who comes along asking Jesus to come and heal his servant. Now, this guy didn't want Jesus to come to his house. He was embarrassed. He said, it's not worth it. You can't come to my house. And yet he said, but I know that even without coming to my house, just by speaking, you can heal this guy. And so in verse 10, Jesus said that this guy's faith, this Roman centurion's faith, was stronger than many of the Israelites, many of God's chosen people. And maybe that's a challenge to us. Verse 14, Jesus goes on a bit of a healing spree. And then in verse 18, we see something about the cost of following Jesus. And basically Jesus is saying that if we choose to follow Christ, then we need to put him before anything and everything else. We can't be worrying about anything else at the same time. We can't put priorities before him. We can't have things that are going to be an excuse where at some point we're going to want to stop and go back and do something else. If we make a decision to follow Christ, that needs to be our number one priority. Yes, it's going to be hard. It's going to involve sacrifice, but it is the most amazing, amazing life. Friends, today, in today's readings, I'm inspired by the faith of Abraham and of the centurion, and by the life of the guy that we see, Ephron. That's the one. God has promised to be with us, and there is nothing impossible for God, and yet all he asks is that we trust him. Not just with our words. Let's not just be like some of the Israelites, if you like, that speak out faith, but then when it comes to living it, they're shown up by the people you would least expect. Let's be trusting God with our words, yes, but also with our lives. Let's be a living example to everybody that we meet. Friends, have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow. God bless.